There you are.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
And on Saturday, maybe things won't get real.
No, don't believe anything you see or hear on Saturday.
It may be one of those days where you think something doesn't sound quite right, and perhaps it's not. We mentioned earlier about Taco Bell some years back taking out a full-page ad. I think it was in USA Today, but it may have been New York Times or something, saying that they purchased the Liberty Bell and called it the Taco Liberty Bell, and that got a lot of. Finally, somebody. Finally said, well, maybe we ought to take a look at this. And if it doesn't sound quite right, there's a possibility that it's an April Fool's joke.
Yes, and
there have been some classics over the years.
There have been some good ones, for sure.
And we have just an example. Back in the early 50s, this was done on telling people about the great spaghetti crop that was coming for the coming year. A lot of people bought it. They were growing spaghetti.
I love it. Well, it looks real. They did a great job.
What the amazing thing is that the links that some of these people go to and that production was back in the early 50s, as we said, from merry old England, on an April Fool's Day joke. By the way, do you know how the tradition got started, or why they call it April 1st? Because the original calendar, one of the original calendars had April 1st as New Year's Day.
Oh.
They changed the year. Years changed over on April instead of January, and years later, as people were still celebrating New Year's on the 1st of April, they were called April Fools. And you're not with it. You get the right calendar and don't use the old one. You're foolish to do that. So that's how it started. Now, some of my favorites. You have one?
I don't know.
Neal Boortz is one of my favorites.
Okay, let's hear it.
Talk show guy Neal Boortz, who was on in Atlanta, WGST at the time. Then he went over to WSB, and then his show became syndicated nationwide. And I love his book. Somebody's got to say it. But he had one when he was still at WGST, just a local thing. He came on one morning, on April Fool's morning, and said that the Atlanta water supply had a dangerous chemical that if you breathed this, it was, it contained a dihydromonoxide. And he said, this is so dangerous that breathing this stuff for 30 seconds will kill you. And people were calling up, people were in a panic. The mayor finally calls up and he says, I'll have you know that there's not a single drop of dihydromonoxide in the Atlanta water system. And you're scaring people and all that. Well, dihydromonoxide, H2O, is water. And if you breathe water for 30 seconds, chances are it's going to kill you.
Yes, it will.
So that was one of my faves. The other one, I think one of the classics of all time was in 1985. Sports Illustrated had a story about Sid Finch, who was a baseball player that the New York Mets had discovered at a monastery in India, who could throw a fastball at almost 200 miles an hour. And that he was considered, and the story was written. I mean, they had pictures of the Mets players with this guy, and they had the batting cages with black curtains around it, so that so you couldn't get real pictures of this guy. And it was written by George Plimpton. The article was, and George Plimpton was the preeminent sports writer of the times. He and Dan Jenkins were two of the biggest sports writers of the era, and they said this could be the phenomenon, the phenom of all time in baseball. This guy could throw a pitch at 200 miles an hour. If you read the headlines of the cut line that they had on the front page of the Sports Illustrated with his picture on it, and if you took the first letter of every one of the words that was in there, it said Happy April Fool. It spelled Happy April Fool's Day. But there were sportscasters who were going on the air with this story. I was doing television sports at the time, and I was looking at this, and there was just something that said, "Don't talk about this on the air." There's just something about this that just doesn't make any sense, and that there's no human being that could possibly throw a baseball at 200 miles an hour. And sure enough, it was all an April Fool's joke. So, but that to me is one of the classics of all time.
See, and I just don't think that people have the that takes effort, right? And I think that, unfortunately, I don't know that a lot of people have that kind of effort to do things. I think that they would rather generate something in AI, and I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not. I think we've talked about this too. I think, unfortunately, the technology has made us less creative and less, willing to do things like that. But
when I was a student at Ole Miss, we had some great football teams, and our quarterback was Archie Manning, and he went on to his sons Peyton and Eli went on to win Super Bowls.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Well, Archie. This was in a day where the NFL did not sign any football player before they graduated from college. Okay. They didn't try to take them out their junior or senior, their junior year and miss their senior year and go ahead and sign with the NFL and get all this money. But they said that there could be some exceptions, because there was an argument about that at the time, discussion about whether or not the NFL could do this. And there was an article in the Clarion Ledger, the Jackson newspaper, that Archie Manning had signed with an NFL team and was going to skip his senior year at Ole Miss. We were walking around with black armbands on. And, of course, most people didn't read the entire article, where it got down to the bottom and said, and Archie said, we hope that this, people will take this in the good spirit of April Fool's Day. and most people didn't get that far. They just got to the first couple of paragraphs, and we were walking around, in mourning. We were going to lose Archie for his senior year. Fortunately, that was not the case, but it's just one of those classics. So continue to send, if you want to send us a story or something that's going to happen to you when we get back on Monday, and you want to send us a story of something that you did to somebody or somebody played something on you, then by all means do so.
Yes, please do. We love hearing those stories. Mm-hmm. And thanks for tuning in. I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. Mm-hmm. But enjoy your weekend. Make sure to check out some music or some museums this weekend.
Yeah.
And enjoy Savannah.
Yeah, Savannah Music Festival wrapping up. And we'll be back to give you the highlights coming up next week. Enjoy your weekend.